أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له أشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. I don't know, some of you who have were in Jumu'ah listened to the khutbah that focused on the Mawlid of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. It's up to you. We can continue our series, or we can dedicate the session for the Mawlid. Which one you prefer?
We can dedicate it to the Mawlid, my recommendation, but if others want to focus on the series, that is fine. We have one vote for Al-Mawlid.
We can do, maybe even we can mix, unless there is strong opinion, we can mix. So we cannot skip an occasion like this without really at least reminding ourselves and talking about this great man, or the greatest man who has ever walked on earth. Even though it's not like the most important event in his life, the birthday, but because of our situation nowadays, and that majority of Muslims are really ignorant about the life and the personality of the Prophet, and we really are not putting the time and the effort to study it. So maybe we can take advantage of this occasion just to remind ourselves about our duties toward this important piece or part of our religion, which is the Sirah of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Now, it is very unfortunate that Muslims, like they are neglectful and ignorant of their book, the Quran. They are also ignorant and neglectful of their Prophet. And before that, of course, Muslims also, unfortunately, have very little knowledge about Allah to begin with, which is, and this is not a mystery. There is a reason for this, because people are not making the effort. These things, they don't come by themselves. These things you have to study. You have to make the effort to get to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we talked about ways on how to do that. You have to make the effort to study the Quran, and you have to make the effort to study the life and personality of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, so majority of Muslims, they don't bother to do that. Some of the Muslims, they think they are very attached to the Sirah and the life of the Prophet and to his model, but unfortunately they don't focus on the right parts of his life, but they focus on things that are very superficial and very minor. Like, for example, people will try to dress like the Prophet. That's not the most important thing in the life of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Actually, the way he dressed, it's very similar to the way everybody else, including the leaders of Quraysh, were dressing. So that's the way people dress at that time. His beard, his clothes, long, short, things like this. And that's very unfortunate. These people who they think they care to learn or to be like the Prophet. So what we get out of here is that we have the responsibility to study the life, the personality, and the model of the Prophet, and we have many reasons to do that. There are many reasons that we need to do that. One of them is, if we are serious about pursuing the good pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is the person with whom Allah is pleased and praised. So that's by itself is enough reason for us to embark on that study. And then we claim that we are taking him as a role model. How can you take someone as a role model if you have very little knowledge about him? So that's another reason. And قد كان لكم في رسول الله أسوة حسنة. And even if you, beyond these two factors, each one of them is enough. We're talking about very successful, it's a great success story. This is a great success story that is worth studying. I mean, sometimes we study some revolutions because they were successful in affecting change. This is the most successful movement of change in history by all standards. Yeah. So that's also another factor that let's see how this happened. The other thing that is really unfortunate is if you try to do that, or those, the literature, it's not really it's not great, because many literature about the life of the Prophet focus on some superficial things and focus on incident. So it becomes very like narrative. It's like it's like a book of history. This is what happened, and it happened second year and third year and fourth year and etc. And some of them even worse than that. Some of them, they turn the life of the Prophet as a series of battles, to the point that everybody who study those books come with the conclusion that this man spent all his life fighting it. Because you find 80 or 90% of the book is talking about the battles, which is very wrong, because that's exactly opposite of what happened. Because the Prophet spent a couple days involved in battles, day and a half or a few hours. I mean, you can count them out of 23 years. So that's nothing. This is very negligible. And unfortunately, even some films or movies that about the Prophet, they also make it as if he was going from one battle to another. Finish one, start the other, and that's not true. Plus, of course, the Prophet never waged any attack on people. All the battles he was, the few actually battles he was involved in were defensive. So you can see how bad the situation is. If you put the people the majority who don't even care to study or have no knowledge, and then those who have they study and they focus on the wrong stuff, and the twist or the misrepresentation of the seerah, then you can really see how much work is needed, even in this part of our religion, to fix it and revive it. Now, this is what is wrong. So what is right? What is right is one that we have to focus on the Prophet from the Quran, and there are some essential elements in the life and the personality of the Prophet that Quran focused on. I mentioned in Jumu'ah, one is the fact that he's a role model. So if you want to be like the Prophet, if you claim you like him, you love him, you are following him, then you have to develop yourself into a role model. So لقد كان لكم في رسول الله أسوة حسنة. You become a أسوة حسنة for people around you. Role model. That's really, now we're talking seriously. When we're talking business, we're talking how we can follow the sunnah of the Prophet the right way. And the second thing is essential thing. The fact is that the Prophet was sent as a mercy to humanity. Actually, it was mentioned exclusively. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. We sent you but a mercy to humanity. You want to be like the Prophet, you have to become a mercy to the people around you. And going all the way to humanity at large. I mean, you should become a blessing wherever you settle. I mean, to your cousins, to your family, to the neighborhood, to wherever you settle as an individual or as a family or as a community, you become a mercy and a blessing to your surrounding or your environment. These can help you really. I mean, two key words. By the way, the best way to understand our religion is by focusing on the key words and on the key verses and hadith. Before we get lost in the details. So mercy, uswa and rahma, role model and mercy to humanity. Another thing that can help understanding and appreciating the seerah of the Prophet is to embark on the study with, you have in the background that because he was the seal of the prophets, his followers, because there will be no prophets after him, his followers are expected to be the messengers of their people or of their environment. Yani each one should become like Rasula Qawmah. During the time of the Prophet, somebody will come like from a tribe, and then they embrace Islam, and then they go back to their tribe and try to affect change. And we're going to talk in a minute about what does the Prophet do and what should every one of us do. Now there is no such thing. There is no tribe, and the Prophet is not alive to go and spend some time with him to learn. But we have the book, we have the Quran, and we have the Sunnah. So each one of us is supposed to play the role of the messenger of the Prophet to your people. This is how I understand, by the way, the verse وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ وَيَكُونَ الرَّسُولُ عَلَيْكُمْ شَهِيدًا. That we made you into balanced nations so that you'll be witnesses over the nation in the same way as the Prophet was witness over you. Which means that the role that every Muslim individual and every Muslim community or family or entity should play in its surrounding and its domain is the same way that the role the Prophet has played. And the role the Prophet, as we have seen, was a role model and was a mercy and was a leader, and leader by example. So that's important to keep in mind, that this is not something luxury or extra. You are studying basically so that you understand your role and you fulfill it. Because the role that the Prophet, the mission that the Prophet fulfilled, the message that the Prophet spread, the job that he did is our job. It is the job of every believer. It's the job of every believer, but he was sent to show us how to do it. So, and that's why he was there only for a limited time, but the message was meant to be universal. Who's going to make that to happen? The only way you can make that happen is by every individual taking, fulfilling the same role of the Prophet in his or her respective environment. What is it that you're going to do? That's, we find it also in a verse. A verse was mentioned in 3 or 4 times, I believe, in the Quran. هو الذي بعث في الأمين رسولا منه قد من الله على المؤمنين إذ بعث فيهم رسولا من أنفسهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة. This is mentioned in Surah Al Imran, was mentioned in Baqarah, was mentioned in Surah Al Jumu'ah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, This is Surah Al Imran, verse 164. 164 لقد من الله على المؤمنين إذ بعث فيهم رسولا من أنفسهم يتلو عليهم آياته. Allah has been truly gracious to the believers in sending them a messenger from among their own to do what? To recite his revelations to them. Like, this is something we understand. He receives revelation and he conveys it. To make them grow in purity. This is basically mentoring, uplifting, and to teach them in the scripture and wisdom. That's it. And that's the life of the Prophet. He was a muallim. He was, in addition, conveying revelation. None of us is going to receive revelation, but the Quran is there. So you convey the message, or the what Allah has revealed, and then what? And then يزكيهم. The job of every believer is not only to develop yourself into a role model, is to help others be all they can be. It's mentoring others, uplifting them, unlocking their potential. This is great. It's a very noble task to do, that you help someone realizing their full potential, all the potential that Allah has given them. So يزكيهم. And these, they go together, because you cannot give that which you don't have. So يزكيهم, it requires that you are in the business of self-development. قد أفلح من تزكى قد أفلح من زكاها. So you are in the business of self-development, and you are mentoring others and uplifting them. Every day you are a better person. You're learning something new. You're incorporating a good habit. You get rid of a bad habit. That's what you do every day yourself. And then each one of us, if we were really truly prophetic community, each one will have some mentees, people whom you are mentoring. And that's how the community become very strongly connected through this mentorship connection, in addition to the brotherhood and sisterhood. And that's what explained to you why that community of the Prophet was so strong, because it has 4 elements of strength that made it very strong, even when they are short in number, even when they didn't have a lot of resources. 1, big mission, unity of purpose, and that's big in terms of strength. There is a big difference between someone who has mission driven, has a cause, has a dream, driven by a cause or driven by a dream, or someone who's just trying to get by. There is a unity of leadership, and leadership is very much emphasized. And there is this brotherhood and sisterhood, and there is this mentorship. That became very strongly connected community that we know and we admire. So zakihim, that's important. And then what? يعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة. Teaches. So mentoring and teaching. Of course, these are little different, because you can teach a large number, but you can only mentor few people, because mentoring requires close connection, so that you can really help shaping that personality, etc. But teaching can happen. So يعلمهم, teach them what? Teach them the book, Quran. And the Prophet says, خيركم من تعلم القرآن وعلمه. The best amongst you is the one who learns Quran and teaches it. Of course, we're not talking about memorization here, or even tajweed, or all of these are good things, but the most important thing is to study the Quran and teach it, the content, the subject, the matter. It's not just helping people memorizing, which is great, but that's not, that's an addition. In addition, that should not be substitute for learning the substance of the Quran and the essence and teaching it. And then hikmah. Teach them what? Teach them wisdom. Unfortunately, some tafsir, they say wisdom means sunnah, which I don't know why. There is no reason to restrict it. Just keep it as is, wisdom. It's a very nice word. It's something Allah is saying, whoever got wisdom, he or she got a lot of blessing. So leave it, hikmah. What is wisdom? Under wisdom, you can put any useful knowledge. Scientific, social sciences, family, spousal relationship, parenting, health awareness, you name it. Anything that can help people in this life and in hereafter can be placed under wisdom, because that's what Quran, the purpose of Islam is for us to develop this universe, and in order to do that, we have to discover the rules. How is it functioning, both the physical part of the universe and the human part of the universe. So any study, any knowledge, anything that can help, and they are related. يزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة. So teaching the book and wisdom can help people becoming better or improving and growing. So if you want to summarize the life of the Prophet, then I'd like to use that square: learning and teaching, self-development, and mentoring. That's if you want to be like the Prophet. You want to drop all of this and you just find a hair cover or amama, and then keep your beard long and your pants short, and then maybe use miswak, and you think that you are like the Prophet, that's up to you. But that has nothing to do. That's not what made him a special person. It's a role model and mercy. It is learning, teaching, self-development, and mentoring. That's, in a nutshell, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If we want to go more into understanding his life and his personality, then we go to the most important thing that we should focus on when we study his seerah. And these are, number one, his relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So now just two essential characteristics of the Prophet: the role model and mercy. And then 4 tasks, that's a square. And now we're talking about 4 elements that we should focus on when we study the life of the Prophet. One is his relationship with Allah, and yes, his worship. And we should, all of us should try to get our worship as close as possible to the Prophet, because that's consistent with him being role model. Your prayers, you should be working on it and improving it and perfecting it, both in intensity and quality, to bring it closer and closer. Maybe you will not reach, but closer and closer to the prayer of the Prophet. So that relationship, this is a man who spent his night praying, even though he had that humongous mission to fulfill, and he fulfilled with the full dedication, as we'll talk about it in a minute. But yes, his focus on his worship. This is someone who's connected to Allah all the time. Ibadah, relationship with Allah, his spirituality, his faith, etc. That's one major item that we have to go and study and learn. Second, his character, khuluq, and this is a big, subject here, and big file that we are opening, because it's very, very shameful and embarrassing that the followers of this great man with the perfect, impeccable character, their societies are in the way in this situation, yani, that you see. It's something that is mind-boggling, as they say. It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about his khuluq, وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. Indeed, your manners and your character is great. And imagine Allah is saying something, saying great about something, then it is great. Yeah. So that's khuluq, عظيم. His wives talked about his character, and of course, people who are so close to him, they know him better. And as you know, as we all know, most people, if not all people, their appearance look better than their reality. So when you get closer and closer to them, your impression and your assessment will go down, because you start discovering some deficiencies and some shortcomings that we do a good job in concealing them. Only the Prophet is the other way around. The closer you get to him, the more you appreciate and admire his character. Why? Because they are real, they are authentic, they are genuine. So who loves the Prophet the most and who appreciate and admire his character the most? The closest people to him. Why? Because these are real, genuine, authentic characters. They're not masks. Yeah. They're not masks, they are real characters. So the closer you get, the more you appreciate. It's like a piece of jewelry. You see it from, or a piece of art, you see it from distance, you like it, and then the closer you get, the more you admire it. That's so his character, khuluq. And of course, on top of character comes a sadaq, which is now lost, unfortunately, to a large extent. Honesty, truthfulness. This is a person who lived for 4 years in a small community. All of them are cousins. It's a tribe, and life was so simple. It was not the metro area that people are seeing each other and interacting with each other every day. And you know what, all those problems, they go usually when in extended families, etc., because of the gossip and etc. And this is a person, the people of Quraysh, the leaders who were been fighting him later on, they said, ما جربنا عليك كذبا. I mean, you never lied to us. 4 years. Sadiq al-Amin, that's what he was called. And just tell me now, where is this character in the Muslim societies? Where? Honesty, truthfulness, integrity. It's almost people are doing exactly the opposite. See, everyone who goes for visits to a Muslim society or Muslim country comes back with that feeling, very depressed on how widespread is lying and cheating and deceptions and lack of decency, and nobody keeps promises and no work ethics, and nobody's trying to perfect or excel in what they do, and it's a total mess. You cannot really, it's hard to accept that these people have this man as their role model, and that's what they claim. There is no evidence for that. Actually, they are much closer to doing exactly the opposite of the teaching of the Prophet. So ibadah, worship, and character. And then his dedication to the cause, dedication to the mission. And remember that this is not his job, that's our job. He was sent to show us on how to do it. but it's our job like it was his job, but it was not his exclusive job. And this is about 23 years, 23 years, day in, day out, was looking for ways to advance his cause and spread his message. He will talk to everybody who is willing to listen. And even though he was harassed and humiliated and rejected so many times, that never discouraged him of just keep going. You stop by a group of people or tribe, do you have a minute? If they say yes, he goes and start introducing himself and his message. These group of people reject him, he goes to the next group of people or whoever is there. Whoever is there who's willing to listen. And during 1 year, there was actually even the 13 years in Mecca, the number of people who responded are not many. Probably maybe less than, on the average, maybe less than one person a month here. There was a year where he never get any positive response, zero. Nobody responded. But that did not change anything. Dedication to the cause, you live the cause. You live that mission. It's then you're always, it's something that is preoccupying all your mind all the time. And just tell me how many Muslims nowadays, not even like that, even try to be like that, or think they have to be mission driven and they have to embrace this life mission, Islam as a life mission. Dedication to the cause is third thing. And fourth, of course, his leadership model. Leadership model, I personally, I'm one of those people who read so many books and models about leadership, maybe on almost everything that was published or an important thing that was published. And I was really impressed by finding all the elements of successful and effective leadership in the leadership model of the Prophet. Even though they were simple, they were not like articulated in today's language, but the element of successful leadership and effective leadership, you find them. Actually, it's even more than that. There are some things that, or some features, they consider them contradictory or very hard to balance. Like, for example, collective leadership versus individual leadership. That's hard to balance. Decisiveness versus consultation. It's very hard to balance. Consultation can lead to paralysis. Decisiveness can lead to dictatorship. The Rasul ﷺ, very decisive and consult extensively about everything. There was a model on building and leading a very successful community. I mean, the Prophet has no hard power on the companions, was not really paying them, but didn't have any leverage, materialistic leverage. So that adds to the successful leadership model. And about leadership, and I will conclude with this, there are two verses, I'll conclude with two verses that we all should really study, and because they tell us about the leadership model of the Prophet. فَبِمَا رَحْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ, that's Surah Al Imran, Surah 3, verse 159. فَبِمَا رَحْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ لِنْتَ لَهُمْ وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَضًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَانْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ فَاعْفُ عَنْهُمْ وَاسْتَغْفِرْ لَهُمْ وَشَاوِرْهُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ فَإِذَا عَزَمْتَ فَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ الْمُتَوَكِّلِينَ. verse 159. By an act of mercy from Allah, you were gentle in your dealings with them. And just this criterion, so many leaders and so many so-called leaders or proclaimed leaders, they fail. Yani, there are people who think that just they claim to be trying to be like the Prophet, and they're very rude. This is Allah is saying that it was mercy from Allah that you are gentle in your dealings with them. Had you been harsh or hard-hearted, they would have dispersed and left you. So pardon them. Remember, these verses were revealed after the Battle of Uhud. The Battle of Uhud, even though we covered it extensively, it's basically there was a consultation, and the consultation apparently led to disaster because some soldiers or companions violated the directives of the Prophet. So it was bad. It's a defeat because some people didn't do what they're supposed to do. And consultation apparently led to disaster. So one can think that say, okay, I'm not going to consult with you anymore because last time I followed your opinion and it led to disaster. Quran comes and say exactly the opposite. Pardon them. So pardon them. And what? And ask forgiveness for them. Pardon them and ask forgiveness for them. Consult with them about matters. وَشَاوِرْهُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ. Again, so the process was right, even if the outcome was wrong, but that process, consultation, so this consultation as a principle was reinforced once and for all, because it came in the worst condition you can think of. It's a battle. Consultation led to defeat. So that can be an excuse to stop it. No, consult with them about matters. Then when you have decided on a course of action, put your trust in Allah. Allah loves those who put their trust in Him. I can tell you until now, after all these centuries, we Muslims failed miserably to strike that balance between consultation and decisiveness. Consult, but when you decided, we move on. Until now, we always fall in one of the extremes, either dictatorship, and we have seen so many of it for so long, or we have seen recently when some regimes were toppled, we fell in chaos and in paralysis. Until now, we are failing to implement this very important element and reason for the effectiveness of the leadership model of the Prophet. We have to come up with a system, whether in managing our communities or families even, or societies or nations. We have to come up with a system that will ensure that this combination, this very delicate balance, that there should be a consultation, extensive consultation, and there should be mechanism of decision making that after that there is no more consultation, otherwise it becomes paralysis. So that's the first verse, again, Surah 3, Al Imran, verse 159. And the other verse, also amazing, in amazingly short way, Quran describes the characteristics of the leadership of the Prophet. That's at the end of Surah At-Tawbah. Repentance, I believe Surah 9. Tawbah, Surah 9, I believe. Yeah, Surah 9 and chapter 9 and verse 128 and 129. لقد جاءكم رسول من أنفسكم عزيز عليه ما عنتم حريص عليكم بالمؤمنين رؤوف رحيم. Actually, if any leader, Muslim leader at any level, find a rejection or is met with a rejection or doesn't really, people are giving him hard time, they have to come to these verses, because فَبِمَا رَحْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ لِنْتَ لَهُم. You were, by the mercy, act of mercy, you were gentle, otherwise they would have left and dispersed, left you. And here it says, this is what makes people trust a leader and follow. And so لَقَدْ جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ. A messenger has come to you from among yourselves. Your suffering distresses him. And you show me how many leaders, how many Muslim leaders at any level, they are really so compassionate, and so to the point that the suffering of people distresses them. Many of them, unfortunately, even like leaders of movements and parties itself, find them living in a different world. They really are not even aware of the suffering of people yet. Your suffering distresses him. He is deeply concerned for you. Harisun alaykum. You combine the two. Azizun alayhi ma anittum. Harisun alaykum. Bil mu'minina ra'ufun rahim. Full of kindness and mercy towards the believers. And we know that mercy to humanity, not only to the believers. I mean, the other verse is even more general. But this is in context of leadership, because his followers were the believers. So it's not like the Prophet had mercy and only to believers, but because the context here is a context of leadership. So your suffering distresses him, cares, concerned deeply for you, want to see you very successful. That's leadership. Leadership when the person become, what do you call it? Tajarrud is self what? Basically the humble and don't care about himself, cares about people. So unfortunately, that's not the, that's one reason why we are in where we are, because the elements of the prophetic model and the prophetic community, we have none of them. We don't have a rallying cause or a mission that will inspire and empower and get the best out of us. We don't have united leadership. There is no leadership whatsoever. And of course, the brotherhood and sisterhood is not there. Very casual relationships and superficial. And then the mentorship also is not there. None of the elements of the prophetic community exist, not only in a Muslim societies, because there we can say that because these are governed or ruled by oppressive regimes, but even when we have the chance to manage our own affairs here, we still fail to build a real prophetic community. I will conclude with the statement that Khadija radiallahu anha made about the Prophet to tell you, to confirm this compassion. As you know, when the Prophet received the revelation, he was scared and came back to Khadija, and she was comforting him. And she said the following: لا يخزيك الله أبدا والله لا يخزيك الله أبدا إنك لتصل الرحم وتقرئ الضيف وتحمل الكل وتكسب المعدوم وتعين على نوائب الحق. Amazing list of characters and manners of the Prophet. Allah will never let you down, because you reach out and you are kind to your cousins and your relatives, because you are very generous with your guests, تقري الضيف. And then the rest is all helping those who need help. Just language is very eloquent, تحمل الكل, تكسب المعدوم, and then you help in any good cause. Basically that Khadija was telling him that because you didn't let people down, Allah will not let you down. Because you are so compassionate to people, and anybody who needs help, they can find you, they can count on you. Allah will not let you down. And I mentioned and I repeat that the true happiness in this life is in giving. Unlike what many of us think, the true happiness is in giving. When you help one way or another, or you make a difference in the life of people, or you have a positive impact, or you make some good contribution to the good cause, that's where you're going to find the true happiness and true satisfaction. That you cannot purchase it with all the money in the world. So people are really want to buy more and make more money, thinking that's how they can become happy. There is nothing wrong with this, but I'm saying that the true happiness, Allah created us in a way, our nature finds the true happiness in giving and sharing, rather than owning and buying more and making more money. That's the least we can do towards our Prophet. Of course, this is not meant to be something that we rely on it exclusively. This is like we said about Quran. I'm hoping that this can inspire all of us to really have some incentive to study the seerah, the life and the personality and the model of the Prophet. Like we said about that, we have to have also to be motivated to study the Quran, because we are missing so much by not studying the Quran and not studying the seerah, the biography of the Prophet. And if you truly understand this deen, this faith, religion, and you want to really, that you're taking it seriously, the conclusion I come up with all the time is there is so much to learn and there is so much to do. It is not the religion that we inherited that is something that there are a couple of things that you do on the side and that's it. It is a life mission, very inspiring, very empowering mission, very noble mission, and it gives you so much energy and so much motivation, and raises the bar of your dreams and your aspirations very high. And if we understand it properly and we take it seriously, again, we realize that there is really so much to learn and there is so much to do if we want to do it right. Any questions or any comments?
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Ranushi.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Well, I was wondering, and I heard you talking about this topic too many times about the characters of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but I still I'm not clear about where we lost that history. It's like I grew up going to school, and I'm sure like the majority of us who went overseas in our own countries, the seerah of Prophet Muhammad did talk about the ghazawat and the fights, and we just recently learned that through all of these ghazawat that the Prophet participated in, there was from both sides about like 650 people who were killed or whatever. So if it wasn't as significant, why in our, and how it got into our education in our minds that it was that important?
That's a very good question. And it has actually, I mean, without trying to find excuses, but so many damage that happened to Islam and Muslims happened in that turning point when Muslims switched from being governed by consent, by leaders they choose, to dynasty, families, and absolute power. So that, no matter how much we say about it, that transition can probably explain most of what happened after that. Because I think everything else followed after that. Actually, two things you can, and they are related. One is the civil war. And the civil war that also led or helped settling for that dynasty rule. Dynasty rule means what? Means these people who are governing in the name of Islam. Just keep in mind, these are Amir al-Mu'mineen and Khalifa and etc. So what they do, they cannot confront religion directly. They cannot say, forget about Islam. So they went into this twisting of promoting the parts of Islam that serves them and marginalizing the parts of Islam that can pose a problem for them. So any idea about justice and change and so all of this has gone, disappeared. So what was promoted is fiqh al-ibadat, fiqh al-tahara, fiqh how to make wudu, how to make ghusl, how to make up prayer. That was promoted because that does not challenge their rules, their power or their. In addition, these people, like any empire of that time, they were involved in business of fighting. And most of it was not like in the name of Islam. I mean, there is no Islam would tell you go and fight people and take their women and spoils. You know, there is nothing in Islam that says this. But they were doing it like any empire at that time. There was no international law. There were no international borders. If you don't expand, somebody else will expand at your expense. So every empire of that time was expanding all the time. So this idea of ghazawat, etc., was promoted because it helps. I mean, these people are claiming that they're doing ghazawat, they're doing jihad, fi sabilillah. So these things were also promoted. Almost everything, every damage that happened can be traced to that transition and to that. And there is a hadith that says that says something very similar. That تنقض عرى الإسلام عروة عروة أولها الحكم. That Islam will disintegrate, or the Islamic construct will disintegrate gradually, and the first step is the governance, because الناس على دين ملوكهم. Governance has a lot of influence. I mean, if people are no longer free, if the one who's in charge is concerned about controlling people, no longer leading or inspiring or empowering. No, they want just control. So they want to keep them busy with certain things, and they want to, because the whole idea of dynasty is control. It was a power struggle that will settle for whoever wins that struggle will have absolute power, and all their concern is in control. So that's why we ended up with this understanding of Islam that you have learned in school and we all learned, which is just the rituals, little bit of fiqh, and when it comes to the seerah, it's a series of battles, which is totally wrong. I mean, Rasul was involved in Badr, which was like half a day, in Uhud, which was also 1 day or half a day, and then Ahzab, that's it. Yani. We're talking about days. And Ahzab was not even a battle, was they besieged the people, the Mecca, the enemies of the Prophet, besieged the Medina, and there was even no fights. So that's all. That's what the Prophet was involved in. Yeah. They kept even expedition like Syria or something. Yes, the Prophet was sending expeditions because it was very hostile environment and want to know what's going on, because there was no radars at that time. There was no electronic intelligence. There is only human intelligence. So, but fighting, as I said, it's a couple days. Yeah. Any other question?
Yeah, I want to make an analogy, a comment on the verse you read from Surah At-Tawbah, verse 128. لقد جاءكم رسول منكم من أنفسكم عزيز عليه ما عنتم حريص عليكم بالمؤمنين رؤوف رحيم. It's our duty to also be we have these characters towards our friends, family members when they have a problem. So anytime the Prophet had a problem, someone had a problem, or the community had a problem, he showed concern, and when there was distress, he showed concern. So I think that's a model of a leadership where you show concern for someone that comes to you, with a problem, wants advice, or wants is asking you to solve their problem, whether it's your son, your daughter, your friend, your wife. Even when it comes to customer service, yeah, I'm sure a lot of us have called customer service to resolve a problem. And when you talk to someone that a representative that has that shows concern for your problem, you feel good about that experience. You feel like, okay, yeah, this person is really good at customer service. They're doing a great job. So and that's they are trained to do that. Customer service representatives is to show concern to your problem, and try to solve it for you, and you gain loyalty. The business gains your loyalty. And similar thing with being a father or a mother, or a husband or a wife. Someone comes to you, or a friend, they come to you, your son, you show concern, you solve their problem, that builds loyalty, that builds trust and love.
You're right. Yeah, I mean, this is not, again, leadership. It's not a position that you have. Everybody is supposed to be a leader, because leadership is defined as influence, and everybody should try to have a positive influence wherever you are. So anything that we said about leadership, it's not like for those who are in charge. It's for everybody, and in every context, family, and workplace, neighborhood, wherever you are.
Before anyone comes in with more questions, I just want to make an announcement. Next week, inshallah, we're going to be at the masjid, Shirley Gate Mosque, for the lecture. So what we decided to do was to rotate between doing a Zoom lecture and in person. So 1 week we're going to be doing in person, and the other week we're going to be doing Zoom. So we're going to rotate between in person and Zoom. So next week, inshallah, join us at the Shirley Gate Mosque.
We will have it on Zoom when you go to the masjid at the same time?
I think we can do that, so that those who cannot join, they still can be part of it.
You think, Ayman, you can do it, you think?
I don't know if we have, do we have Wi-Fi at the masjid?
Yeah, we do.
You need to ask Farouk to give you the password.
Yeah. We should be able to do it, inshallah.
Inshallah, yeah, we can do it. That makes it easy.
Dr. Suhail, I have, if nobody has another question, you feel it probably strange, this question. When Sayyidatna Khadija, she said that hadith, you mentioned it today.
Hmm.
How we received this hadith? This hadith was first few days of Islam. Nobody was with Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Khadija. And at that time, they were recording, somebody writing, or who memorized it, how the other Sahaba, they received this hadith, because Sayyidina Aisha, she died, I think, 10 years or 9 years after the Islam, how we have it,
Can
I
you
really about this particular hadith, but
repeat the hadith, Dr. Anushi? I may have missed it.
it's not hadith, actually. It's a statement by Khadija, not hadith. I mean, when she was comforting the Prophet. Usually, the hadith that doesn't have a rule or a fatwa, I'm flexible with it, and I can use it without even really scrutinize it. But I strongly recommend that any hadith that you're going to build on it an action has to be really scrutinized for the meaning and for the authenticity. But the hadith like this, for example, it's not, I mean, it's very reasonable that Khadija narrated this story, for example, later, of what happened, or the Prophet himself narrated this, or a combination of the two. It's not, because it was a big event, and like, for example, if any one of us has had similar thing happen to you, maybe next time you meet your family, friends, and you tell them, or your wife will tell them, this is what happened on that particular day, and we had accident, or we had so it's not unusual, especially that the event was big, that people will that either Khadija herself will tell the story and include that statement, or the Prophet will tell the story and include the statement.
Jazakallah khair.
وإياكم إن شاء الله.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Dr. Sir, I would like to recap if I miss anything up here. He said the Mawlid of Sayyidina Muhammad, first is his role model, and Uswat al-Hasana. Second is mercy, humanity. And he mentioned the verse of Ali Imran, which is Tazkiyah and reciting the book and wisdom. And he brought the 4 tasks, which is learning and teaching and self-development and mentoring. Then he went to the 4 character, which is his relationship with Allah
And the worship.
worship.
Very good.
Then you have the character, على خلق عظيم. Then you have the dedication of the cause of the message or mission. Or leadership model.
That's it.
You minded then verse Al Imran, which is 159, and Surah Tawbah 128. Then you mention about Khadija, and the last one is true happiness is in giving or positive impact and sharing. Is that what it is?
Very good summary. Very
Jazakallah.
good. So 2 essential characteristics of the Prophet, the role model and mercy, that four tasks. The life of the Prophet was evolving, learning, teaching, and self-development and mentoring. And then the four items that we need to focus on when we study the Sirah are the worship, the khuluq, character, the dedication to the cause, and the leadership model of the Prophet. So about 10 items. I can tell you there is rarely you will find any book of Sirah will focus on these things, because they take the other route, which is the historical narration of what happened and the battles and etc.
Jazakallah khair.
وإياكم إن شاء الله.
Okay, Dr. Suhail, if nobody has another question, we'll see you next Sunday, inshallah.
Inshallah.
In the masjid.
Inshallah.
Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. Wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Salaam alaikum.